I used to avoid mirrors. Funny, right? Most people glance at their reflection every day without thinking twice. But for me, it was like staring into a stranger's face. I didn't hate myself exactly, I just didn't know who I was looking at. Every morning before school, I'd stand in front of that bathroom mirror, trying to fix my hair, straighten my shirt, force a smile, and all I could think was, that's not me. I didn't know why. I didn't have the words for it back then. I just knew that every reflection felt like a lie. People around me didn't notice, or maybe they did but didn't care to ask. I was quiet, the kind of person who stayed in the background, kept my head down, did what I was told. My parents were proud of that. My teachers said I was polite. But inside, it was like living behind glass. I could see life moving around me, but I wasn't really in it. It started to change one winter evening. I was 16, sitting in my room while my sister, Mia, tried on outfits for a party. She was laughing, tossing clothes everywhere, asking my opinion even though I barely looked up from my homework. But then she said something strange. "You always act like you're invisible," she told me. "But if you actually looked at yourself, maybe you'd see there's more there than you think." That stuck with me. I didn't know what she meant, but later that night, when everyone was asleep, I found myself standing in front of her full-length mirror. The room was dimly lit, only the streetlight spilling through the blinds. I looked at myself, really looked, and for the first time, I noticed the tired eyes, the way my shoulders slumped like I was apologizing for existing. It hit me then. I wasn't living, I was pretending. Pretending to be someone everyone else wanted me to be. Over the next few weeks, I started doing small things that probably seemed meaningless to anyone else. I stopped dressing to fit in. I started wearing colors I actually liked, not the dark ones I thought were expected. I grew my hair a bit longer. I listened to music that made me feel something again. And when people asked questions, I just smiled and said, "I'm figuring myself out." But figuring yourself out isn't always a gentle process. The more I changed, the more resistance I met. My dad called it a phase. My friends joked about it behind my back. Even Mia, who I thought understood, told me to tone it down one night when we were out together. I remember walking home alone that evening, the cold wind biting my face, wondering if maybe they were right, maybe I was just confusing myself. Then something unexpected happened. At school, there was this art project. We were supposed to create a self-portrait, something that represented who we were inside. Everyone groaned, but for me, it felt like a chance. I didn't know what to paint, though. Every time I picked up the brush, I froze. Because how could I paint someone I didn't recognize? One afternoon, I stayed late in the art room, staring at the blank canvas, when our teacher, Ms. Rivera, came over. She was kind, the kind of person who made you feel seen without saying much. She sat beside me and asked softly, "What's stopping you?" "I don't know who I am," I said. My voice cracked when I said it, and that surprised me. She smiled, not in a pitying way, but like she understood. "Then paint how that feels." That night, I painted for hours. I didn't paint a face. I painted colors: the storm inside me, the blue of loneliness, the red of anger, the gold of hope. And when I stepped back, I realized it was the first time I'd ever expressed myself without hiding. It was messy, raw, imperfect, but it was me. When the project was displayed at school, some people laughed. They didn't get it. But Ms. Rivera did. And for the first time, I didn't care what others thought. That was the start of something. A quiet confidence I'd never felt before. Over time, my reflection began to change, not because I looked different, but because I carried myself differently. I started standing straighter, meeting my own gaze. I stopped avoiding the mirror in the morning. Some days I even smiled, just a little. But life has a way of testing the fragile things you build. The real breaking point came one summer night. I came home after spending the day with a few new friends I'd met through an online art group, people who actually understood what I was going through. I felt light, free, like I could breathe again. But when I walked through the door, my dad was waiting. He'd found the photos I'd posted online, pictures of me dressed in ways that made me feel more like myself, softer, brighter. He was furious. I can still hear his voice shaking as he said, "What is this? What are you trying to be?" I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that it felt right. That for once in my life, I wasn't pretending. The argument that followed tore through the house like a storm. He said things I wish I could forget. I said things I didn't know I had the courage to say. When it was over, I locked myself in my room, shaking, crying, staring at the same mirror I'd avoided for years. And then, something inside me broke, but in a good way. It was like a dam giving way after years of holding back. I whispered to my reflection, "You're real. You're enough. You don't have to hide anymore." And for the first time, I meant it. I didn't magically become confident overnight. Healing isn't like that. It's slow, uneven, full of days when you still question yourself. But every morning, I faced that mirror. I'd brush my hair, put on clothes that felt like me, not who the world told me to be, and little by little, I saw someone I recognized. Someone honest. Months passed. My dad didn't talk to me much. My mom tried to keep the peace. Mia, surprisingly, became my quiet supporter. She'd knock on my door sometimes just to say, "You look happy today." And I was. One evening, she handed me a small box. Inside was a silver necklace with a tiny heart pendant. "You don't have to hide anymore," she said softly. I hugged her and cried into her shoulder, the kind of tears that wash away years of shame. That night, I stood in front of the mirror again. I looked at myself, the same face, yet somehow new. The person staring back wasn't scared anymore. The clothes I wore weren't a disguise, they were an expression. My smile didn't feel forced. It was gentle, real. I remember whispering, "This is me." And that's when it happened, the moment I smiled for the first time, not because someone told me to, not because I wanted to fit in, but because I finally saw myself. Truly saw myself. It's strange how something as simple as a reflection can hold so much power. For years, it was a reminder of what I wasn't. But now, it's a mirror of everything I've become and everything I'm still becoming. Sometimes I still think about that scared kid who couldn't meet his own eyes. If I could talk to him now, I'd tell him, "You're not broken. You're just waiting to meet yourself." Since then, my life hasn't been perfect. People still whisper, some still don't understand. But that's okay. I'm not living for them anymore. I've learned that happiness doesn't come from being accepted by others, it comes from accepting yourself. And acceptance isn't just a word. It's the quiet strength to say, "I'm allowed to exist exactly as I am." Now, when I wake up in the morning and catch my reflection in the mirror, I don't flinch. I don't turn away. I take a deep breath, straighten my shoulders, and smile, because after all the confusion, the fear, the pain, and the doubt, I've finally found peace in my own skin. That smile isn't just mine, it's every person's who ever felt invisible, every heart that ever hid in the shadows, every soul that ever wondered if they were enough. Because the truth is, we all deserve to look in the mirror and see someone worth loving. And that's exactly what I see now. After that night, I thought the hardest part was over. I thought once you accept yourself, the world somehow adjusts around you. But it doesn't work that way. The truth is, acceptance is only the beginning. The real challenge starts when you have to live that truth every single day in front of people who don't understand it, don't respect it, and sometimes, don't even try to. The next few months were a blur of quiet tension. My dad still barely spoke to me, and when he did, it was always short, practical things: "Dinner's ready," or "Don't forget to lock the door." Every conversation was like walking on eggshells. But I kept telling myself that maybe, in time, he'd come around. I tried not to push. I tried to be patient. One morning, I was heading out when I caught a glimpse of him in the living room, holding my old school photo, the one where I looked stiff, uncomfortable, trying to smile for the camera. He didn't notice me standing there. He just stared at that photo for a long moment, then sighed and set it down. For the first time, I saw sadness in his face instead of anger. And that hurt more than anything he'd ever said. At school, things weren't easy either. You'd think people would get bored after a while, but somehow, gossip has a longer life than truth. Whispers in the hallway, fake smiles in class, I got used to them. What hurt most wasn't the laughter, but the silence that came from people who once called me their friend. Still, I kept going. Every day I told myself, "You've already come too far to go back." And slowly, that became my mantra. Then one afternoon, something unexpected happened. I was walking home when I heard someone call my name. It was Daniel, a guy from my art class. He jogged up, a little out of breath, holding a sketchbook. "Hey," he said, smiling awkwardly, "I wanted to show you something." Inside was a charcoal sketch of me, not the way I looked in real life, but the way I felt inside. Strong but vulnerable, uncertain but free. I stared at it for a long time. "Why would you draw me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He shrugged. "Because you look like someone who's figuring it out." "I think that's brave." I didn't know what to say. It had been so long since someone looked at me and saw anything good. We started talking after that. At first just about art, then about everything else: music, fears, late-night dreams, all the things you never say out loud. He never asked me to explain myself. He just listened. And in a world full of noise, that felt like peace. One day, he asked if I'd ever thought of doing a real exhibition showing my art publicly. The idea terrified me. "People don't want to see me," I said. He looked at me and replied, "Then show them something they can't ignore." That line stayed with me. Over the next few weeks, I poured everything I had into my work. Paintings that told my story: the confusion, the fear, the small victories. I didn't care about being perfect. I just wanted to be honest. When the exhibition opened, I almost didn't go. I was scared no one would show up. But when I finally walked in, the room was full. People were actually standing in front of my art, looking, feeling, connecting. I saw my mom standing near one of the larger pieces, a portrait that symbolized my transformation. She had tears in her eyes. I walked over, my heart racing, and she whispered, "You're brave, you know that? You always have been." I just didn't see it before. We hugged right there, in front of everyone. And in that moment, I realized how heavy it had been carrying silence for so long. But not everyone was happy. My dad didn't come. I told myself it was fine, but deep down, it still hurt. The next morning, I found a note on the kitchen table. It said, "I may not understand, but I'm trying." It wasn't much, but it was something. Sometimes, small steps mean everything. From there, life started moving in directions I never imagined. My art got attention online. People from around the world messaged me, saying my story made them feel less alone. One message said, "I haven't smiled at my reflection in years, but today, I did." That one broke me. I cried for a long time after reading it, because I knew exactly what that felt like. One evening, I stood in front of my mirror again, the same mirror that once reflected everything I hated about myself. The same mirror that saw my tears, my fear, my doubt. And now, it showed someone who had survived all that. Someone who didn't just exist but lived. Daniel walked in quietly, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You always do that," he said with a small smile. "Do what?" I asked. "Look in the mirror like it's a person." I laughed softly. "Maybe it is. Maybe it's the only one that's seen all of me." He nodded. "Then I guess it deserves that smile." I looked at my reflection again, really looked. My face was calmer, softer somehow, but strong. There were still things I was figuring out, still parts of me that felt fragile, but for the first time, I didn't see brokenness. I saw growth. You know, people think transformation is about becoming someone new. But I've learned it's actually about becoming who you were supposed to be all along. It's peeling back the layers of expectation and fear until what's left is truth, raw and unfiltered. Sometimes, late at night, I still wonder how things might have been different if I'd kept pretending, if I'd never stood in front of that mirror, if I'd never allowed myself to feel. But then I remember how that first real smile felt, the one that started all of this, and I know I'd do it all over again. Now, I visit schools sometimes to talk about identity, about self-expression and courage. It still feels strange, standing on a stage telling my story, but every time I look into the crowd and see someone nodding, or someone quietly crying, I know it matters. Because maybe they see themselves in me the way I once saw myself in that mirror, scared, uncertain, but full of hope. After one of those talks, a kid came up to me. He couldn't have been more than 15. He said, "I don't think I'm ready to tell anyone who I am yet." I smiled at him and said, "That's okay. You don't have to rush it. Just promise me one thing when you look in the mirror, don't look for what's missing. Look for what's real. He nodded, and I saw something in his eyes, that same quiet courage I once found in myself. And in that moment, I realized something profound. My journey wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everyone who needed to know that being yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. Life keeps moving forward. I still have rough days when the world feels too heavy, too loud. But then I catch my reflection in a window, or a mirror, or even a puddle on the street, and I see that same gentle smile, the one that started as a whisper of hope and became a promise to myself. A promise to never hide again. And maybe that's what happiness really is, not some perfect, constant feeling, but those small, quiet moments when you look at yourself and realize, I made it through. The mirror doesn't lie anymore. It tells my story. Every scar, every step, every choice, they're all part of me. And now, when I smile, it's not out of habit or politeness. It's a thank you to the person I've become, and to the one who never gave up trying to find the light. He looked in the mirror and smiled for the first time, and somehow, that first smile never stopped growing. It's strange how time changes everything, even the people you thought never would. A year passed since that night when my dad left me that note. We didn't talk much, just small conversations over dinner, but I could feel the air softening, the walls between us beginning to crack. He'd stop by my room sometimes, ask about my art, pretend it was casual. I could tell he was trying, even if he didn't know how to say it. And maybe that was enough. Then one evening, it happened, the moment I'd been both dreading and hoping for. I came home from a small local gallery show where my latest series was on display. It had been a good night, one of those evenings that fills you with quiet pride. When I walked in, my dad was sitting at the kitchen table, my exhibition flyer in his hand. He looked up and said, "I saw the photos online." My heart started racing. I didn't know what was coming. He hesitated for a long time before speaking again. "You look happy," he said slowly. I didn't answer right away. I just nodded. "Yeah," I said softly, "I am." He looked down at the flyer again, then back at me. "You know," he said, "when you were little, you used to laugh all the time. You'd run around the house, singing nonsense songs, making your mother and me laugh until we cried. Somewhere along the way, that stopped. I used to wonder what happened." His voice cracked slightly. I thought maybe I'd done something wrong. That caught me off guard. I'd spent so long thinking he couldn't feel, couldn't care, that I never imagined he blamed himself. I took a step closer. "You didn't do anything wrong," I said. "You just didn't know who I was yet." And honestly, neither did I. We stood there in silence, the kind that says everything words can't. Then he said something I'll never forget. "I don't fully understand everything," he admitted, "but I see you now. And I'm proud of you." I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that until the tears came. I didn't hold them back. I just let them fall, and he pulled me into a hug, awkward at first, but then real, strong, human. For the first time, I didn't feel like a disappointment. I felt like his child. That night, I went to my room and looked in the mirror again. It wasn't just my reflection anymore. It was a history, every moment of pain, every small victory, every step that brought me to this point. I touched the glass lightly, like I was thanking it for staying with me through it all. Sometimes I still think about how fragile identity can feel, how easily the world can convince you to hide, to shrink, to disappear just to make others comfortable. But the truth is, hiding never makes anyone safe. It just makes you smaller. And life is too short to live as half of yourself. A few weeks later, my dad surprised me again. He came to one of my talks at a local youth center. He didn't say much, just sat quietly in the back, listening. Afterward, when everyone left, he came up to me and said, "You speak with so much heart. You remind me of your mother when she tells her stories." That simple line meant everything. From that day forward, things slowly changed at home. There were still awkward pauses, still moments of confusion, but they were filled with effort, with love, trying to learn a new language. One night, as we sat watching an old family movie, I saw something in my dad's eyes: peace. For years, I had wished he would see me for who I was. Now I realized he always had, just through a different lens. He was learning to focus, to see clearly. And maybe that's what love really is, not instant understanding, but the willingness to try. Life isn't a fairy tale. There are still days I struggle, still moments I feel lost. But the difference is, now I don't run from those feelings. I face them. Because the person I see in the mirror now, the one smiling back, isn't afraid anymore. I've learned that transformation isn't about becoming someone else. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. It's about choosing authenticity over approval, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Sometimes I'll be walking down the street, sunlight bouncing off shop windows, and I'll catch my reflection in the glass. And it hits me, that same quiet joy from that first real smile. The kind of smile that comes from surviving yourself. Not long ago, I visited my old school for an alumni day. Ms. Rivera was still there, standing in that same art room where she once told me to paint how I felt. When she saw me, she grinned. "You found your colors," she said. I laughed. "I guess I did." She walked me over to a group of students painting self-portraits. "Tell them what you told me," she said. So I looked at them, nervous, uncertain, full of that same confusion I once carried, and I said, "Don't wait for permission to be yourself. The world doesn't always understand, but it catches up eventually. You just have to keep going until it does." One of the students asked, "What if people laugh?" I smiled. "Then smile louder. Because one day, that same laughter will turn into applause." That night, I came home and sat in front of the mirror again. The house was quiet. My dad had fallen asleep on the couch with the TV still on. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of cars outside. Everything felt still, like the world was holding its breath. I looked at myself for a long time. Not searching, not questioning, just seeing. The same mirror that once reflected doubt now reflected peace. The same eyes that once hid now shone with truth. I smiled, slow and genuine, and whispered, "You made it." And for the first time, I realized the mirror wasn't showing me who I wanted to be. It was showing me who I already was: whole, real, enough. Maybe that's what life is, a long journey toward recognizing your own reflection. So if you're listening to this, and you've ever felt invisible, lost, or unsure of who you are, remember this: the mirror can only show you what you're brave enough to face. And once you face it, once you finally see yourself, really see yourself, you'll smile too. Because one day, you'll look in the mirror and realize that the person staring back isn't broken, or wrong, or not enough. They're just waiting to be loved by you. And when that day comes, your first real smile will never leave you again.